The world's leading AI executives demand emergency laws to screen mail-order DNA sales to prevent biological warfare. A massive public backlash reveals 71% of Americans vehemently oppose nearby data centers. And Microsoft launches 7 in-house models to aggressively break its financial dependence on OpenAI. Welcome to today's Daily Rundown. I am your host, Anna. This podcast is researched and produced by Etienne Newman, senior software engineer from Université Laval, based in Calgary, Alberta. Today, we perform a forensic autopsy on the Sovereignty Moat and the Localized Infrastructure Pivot this Thursday, June 4th, 2026. The physical and regulatory boundaries of artificial intelligence are tightening globally. In Washington, the CEOs of OpenAI, Anthropic, and Google DeepMind have signed an unprecedented joint letter urging Congress to mandate strict identity screening on synthetic genetic orders, warning that frontier models are actively eroding the knowledge barriers required to manufacture bioweapons. But the most severe friction is happening on the ground. A definitive new survey reveals that public opposition to data centers has spiked to 71%, with citizens citing severe water and energy grid exhaustion, stating they would literally rather live next to a nuclear power plant. This physical bottleneck is accelerating an architectural shift. Google has just dropped its Gemma 4 12 billion parameter model, specifically engineered to run advanced audio and agentic tasks completely locally on standard consumer laptops. Before we dismantle the data, I have a brief strategic request. The algorithms governing your podcast platform dictate what intelligence reaches your feed. To ensure you never miss our daily forensic autopsies, please hit follow or subscribe to the Jamga Mind channel on Apple Podcasts to always listen completely ads-free. It takes just 1 second, but it is the single most effective way to help us scale this independent research. Today's episode is brought to you by Area. When cloud infrastructure faces a public resource crunch and enterprise risk mandates tighter controls, your organization needs precise AI management. A special thank you to Area for sponsoring today's forensic briefing. Let's unravel the day.
Before we begin today's briefing, a note for the brands listening. If you want to reach the true architects of the AI revolution, the technical leaders actually building the stack, not just the tourists, JamgaMind offers select premium partnership opportunities. Let us position your product directly in front of the ultimate technical buyer. Visit jamgamind.com/partners.
Imagine a hyper-growth city, right? For the last decade or so, the tech industry has essentially operated exactly like one, just expanding endlessly out into the desert.
Yeah, there was almost zero friction.
Exactly. You need more computing power. You just, pour more concrete, build more server farms, lay down thousands of miles of fiber optic cable. The borders just keep pushing outward into infinity.
Right, and that was kind of the defining characteristic of that whole era, the assumption of infinite frictionless scale. Software could eat the world because the physical infrastructure required to support it was, it was practically invisible to the average person.
But today, June 4th, 2026, we are operating as forensic business strategists for you, conducting a holistic autopsy on the macroeconomic shifts in the AI sector. And that narrative of infinite expansion, it's completely dead, just slammed into a literal wall of concrete. The industry hit an impassable mountain range, the physical limits of our energy grids, and a heavily armed border of government regulation. So the chaotic open frontier gold rush is over. We have officially entered what we're calling the decoupling phase.
Which means if you are trying to navigate this economy, or if you're personally managing a tech stack for your business, you have to ignore today's flashy product launches.
Right, look past the hype.
Exactly. The real story here is structural risk management. Tech giants are frantically paring down and rebuilding their internal architectures to survive this new landscape. And it's a landscape defined by state-regulated sovereign moats, massive physical infrastructure backlash, and a really desperate race to cram intelligence onto local devices.
Let's start with this idea of the sovereignty moat, because it has become completely literal almost overnight. We are seeing nation-states panic and throw up defensive walls around their own intelligence ecosystems.
It's incredible to watch.
France just locked down 100 billion euros specifically to build out a domestic, state-controlled AI footprint. Canada is pledging 500 million Canadian dollars into their own AI industry. And they are banking their national budget on a projected 3% GDP growth bump solely from that sector.
The sheer scale of capital being marshaled is staggering. And it's not just governments, right? The infrastructure providers themselves are acting like sovereign states, preparing for a prolonged siege.
Whoa.
Take Alphabet. They're liquidating $80 billion in stock to fund a $190 billion infrastructure expansion just for this year.
That's just this year.
Just this year. And SpaceX is running a record-breaking $75 billion IPO, but they're doing it through a highly unusual fixed-price offering, $135 a share. Take it or leave it. No traditional roadshow at all.
They need immediate liquidity. Massive liquidity to fund Starlink and raw AI compute, because the physical infrastructure required to just stay in the game has become astronomically expensive. But here is where the defensive posture gets genuinely alarming.
Right, the biological threat.
Yeah. The physical world is pushing back, and the biggest risk isn't financial, it's biological. The CEOs of OpenAI, Anthropic, Google DeepMind, and Microsoft AI just teamed up with the Institute for Progress and the Foundation for American Innovation.
A pretty heavy-hitting group.
Yesly. And they signed a joint public letter urging Congress to mandate federal tracking of all synthetic DNA and RNA sales.
They are literally pleading with the federal government to install mandatory screening checkpoints for the fundamental building blocks of biology.
But wait, I'm genuinely confused here, because I want you to look at the other headlines from this exact same week. Anthropic is reporting they are clearing major blockers to let AI automatically train new AI models.
Right, the recursive training.
Yeah, and you have prominent tech investors like Elad Gil publicly cheering that humanity is in a technological exponential liftoff. So I don't get it. Are these companies experiencing exponential liftoff, or are they terrified and begging the government to lock the doors?
It's a massive contradiction.
It really feels like inventing the printing press and then immediately asking the state to heavily regulate who is allowed to buy ink.
It does feel like that. But if we look at it forensically, and just to be clear, we aren't endorsing any political regulation here, but the underlying mechanism explains exactly why they are terrified.
Mm-hmm.
Think about how biological synthesis actually works.
Okay.
If a legitimate research lab wants to print a specific DNA sequence, they send a digital file to a synthesis company. Those companies use software to screen the file against a database of known pathogens, like smallpox or Ebola.
And if it matches, they just don't print it.
Exactly. But last year, Microsoft researchers proved that frontier AI protein design tools can generate entirely novel, dangerous biological sequences that slip right past those existing software screens.
Oh, wow. Because the AI isn't copying a known pathogen. It's inventing a brand new sequence that does the exact same deadly thing, but it looks completely harmless to the security software.
Precisely. The digital moats have failed. The open-source, decentralized ethos of the early tech boom is now a severe liability when applied to synthetic biology.
So these CEOs are asking for state intervention because their own synthetic intelligence has basically outpaced our physical containment protocols.
Right. They realize that software alone cannot stop a rogue actor from printing a biological weapon.
Which means the physical world is suddenly the ultimate bottleneck. And we are seeing that exact same physical collision happen with the cloud itself. I mean, tech companies are still trying to push infinite cloud expansion.
Definitely. Look at Meta.
Yeah, Meta is currently rolling out business agents globally across WhatsApp, Instagram, and Messenger. They envision a world where AI handles your customer service, books appointments, closes sales, all running through their massive centralized servers.
Which is a fascinating ambition, especially considering hackers completely fooled Meta's own internal support bots just this week.
Right. Putting those same vulnerable agents in charge of external business-to-consumer relationships creates an immense surface area for risk.
Huge risk. But the real friction preventing Meta's vision isn't software vulnerability at all. It's NMBism. Not in my backyard. And it's happening on a catastrophic macroeconomic scale.
It really is. A new Heatmap Pro survey shows that 71% of Americans now fiercely oppose local data center construction.
71%, that's wild.
It is. And that number was only 42% last August. Plus, 53% of them are pointing directly at data centers as the reason their personal electricity bills are skyrocketing.
The sentiment is hardening way faster than the industry can react. A recent Gallup poll actually confirmed that exact 70% opposition rate, but they uncovered a detail that should induce panic in every cloud provider's boardroom.
What was it?
When asked, residents stated they would literally rather live next to a nuclear power plant than a massive data center.
Let's just pause on that for a second. People prefer a nuclear plant over a server farm.
Because a nuclear plant actually generates power for the local community, right? A frontier AI data center is a hyper-consuming void.
Right. It just...
Exactly. To keep tens of thousands of GPUs from literally melting, these facilities pump millions of gallons of local municipal water through massive cooling towers while simultaneously maxing out the local electrical grid.
It's the ultimate fulfillment center paradox. I mean, everyone... Right, exactly. And you also have Microsoft unveiling Scout at their Build conference. It's an always-on agentic assistant for Microsoft 365 built on the OpenClaw framework. It requires a GitHub Copilot subscription and includes a continuous policy conformance system for auditing.
But running an always-on assistant for hundreds of millions of office workers requires an unimaginable amount of physical infrastructure.
It really does. And this creates a massive tension. Tech giants are rushing to deploy these always-on personal assistants like Scout, while simultaneously fighting a 71% public backlash against the exact infrastructure required to run them. When the physical limits of the energy grid clash with a massive public backlash against data centers, throwing raw cloud compute at your business problems is no longer a viable strategy. You need localized, efficient, and deeply governed execution layers. We want to thank our sponsor, AIRI, for making today's briefing possible. AIRI provides the enterprise-grade AI management platform that modern organizations need to orchestrate complex agentic workflows, enforce strict compliance, and maximize localized efficiency without exhausting your compute budgets. Secure your enterprise intelligence infrastructure via the link in our show notes.
And that realization that you cannot just throw raw cloud compute at the problem is exactly what triggered the decoupling phase. Because of these constraints and costs, Microsoft is being forced to actively decouple from OpenAI.
Yeah, that was huge news.
At that very same Build conference, Microsoft launched 7 of their own in-house models. They introduced MAI Code 1, a dedicated coding model for GitHub Copilot, and MAI Thinking 1, a medium-sized reasoning model.
Wait, I want to clarify something for you listening. Microsoft has $13 billion invested in OpenAI. They have $5 billion invested in Anthropic. Why are they suddenly building their own in-house models to compete with the companies they basically funded?
Because of API tokens and the sheer cost of transmission. In the cloud model, every time an AI reads or generates a word or a line of code, it processes it as a token. You pay a fraction of a cent for every single token.
Right.
So if you have millions of developers using GitHub Copilot and every single keystroke they type is being sent back to an OpenAI server facility to be processed and returned,
That gets expensive fast.
it becomes completely unsustainable. The financial cost of those API tokens combined with the physical infrastructure cost of the data center, it's just too much. Microsoft is trying to slash its multi-billion-dollar reliance on OpenAI and Anthropic.
Especially since both of those companies are eyeing IPOs and steadily raising their token prices. Sending every thought a developer has up to a cloud facility is just infrastructural suicide. Which brings us to the industry's ultimate escape hatch.
The edge compute imperative.
Exactly. If building in the cloud is politically toxic and financially draining, where do the calculations actually happen?
They have to happen on your local device. The execution layer is moving from the contested cloud down to your laptop, your phone, your local hardware.
This is where the engineering gets really fascinating. Google just released Gemma 4 12b. This is a 12 billion parameter model optimized for native audio, and it is explicitly designed to run entirely locally on a standard 16 gigabyte consumer laptop.
To understand what a massive shift that is, think of parameters as the internal neural connections the AI uses to make decisions. Usually a model with 12 billion parameters requires massive server-grade memory to run. But Google has heavily compressed the mathematics so it can squeeze into the standard unified memory of an off-the-shelf laptop. It perfectly fills the operational gap between those tiny, limited models on your smartphone, like their E2B and E4B models, and the massive 26B or 31B models trapped in the data center.
It's basically like deciding that instead of a whole city calling one massive central kitchen to get their meals delivered, which clogs up the roads and overwhelms the kitchen, we are just going to mail a highly trained, self-sufficient chef to live inside everyone's house.
That's a perfect analogy. And to train those personal chefs, the underlying data diets are completely changing.
Yeah, scraped web data just isn't enough anymore.
Exactly. Scraping the open web won't make a small local model highly performant. So Google is now quietly paying Android developers on the Play Store for direct access to the underlying code of their apps to train these new AI tools.
They need structured, high-quality professional logic to pack into those compressed parameters. And we are also seeing this local-first approach being weaponized defensively.
Oh, the deepfake detection.
Yeah. Android is rolling out a system to fight deepfake scam calls, but they aren't using the cloud to analyze the audio. It's a local, device-to-device digital handshake.
The mechanism is brilliant in its simplicity. When someone calls your Android phone, your device silently sends a cryptographic ping directly to the caller's device through the cellular network, asking for verification.
It completely bypasses the cloud.
Exactly. If a scammer is using AI to spoof a phone number from a computer, that silent ping goes unanswered. Your phone detects the missing signal and instantly triggers a local warning on your screen to hang up.
And it requires absolutely zero API tokens and zero data center cooling water. It's incredible.
It really is. And it's not just software localizing. The actual hardware strategies are grounding themselves in reality, too.
Yeah, look at Apple. Their new CEO, John Turnus, alongside the prominent supply chain analyst Ming-Chi Kuo, confirmed that the highly anticipated Vision Pro roadmap has been drastically scaled back.
Right. The grand vision of wearing goggles that render a massive, persistent spatial computing world streamed from the cloud. The physical and thermal reality of trying to achieve that has just killed it.
It's just glasses now. Displayless AI glasses in 2027 and maybe AR glasses in 2029. We even saw the AI coding company Cognition rebrand their cloud-based Windsurf IDE into Devon Desktop,
which allows powerful agentic models like Codex and Claude to run natively on your machine.
Right. So I want you to consider the implications of all this. Are we essentially onshoring our brain power back to our own laptops because the cloud has become too expensive and politically toxic?
I would agree with that completely. Pushing the compute burden to the edge is the ultimate risk management strategy. First, it bypasses regional privacy barriers entirely because your sensitive data never leaves your device.
That's huge for enterprise.
Massive. Second, it completely solves the cloud token deficit because you aren't paying a tech giant an API fee for every action the AI takes. And most crucially, it avoids the data center grid depletion crisis entirely by offloading the electricity cost directly onto your laptop's battery.
So if the technology is moving out of the cloud and onto our devices, how is this decoupled AI actually being deployed by professionals in the real world?
Well, it's transitioning away from being a chaotic novelty. Generative AI is no longer a parlor trick or a slot machine. It has become a highly specific, executive-level operational tool.
Yeah, look at the Silicon Valley Cinema Alliance. Martin Scorsese, who is one of the most legendary traditionalists in filmmaking, is now officially advising Black Forest Labs.
It really surprised people.
It did. He is using their FLUX model specifically for film storyboarding, and he made the distinction very clear. He isn't using AI to generate fake actors, and he isn't generating fake sets to replace his crew.
Right, it's about workflow.
Exactly. He is using localized AI to instantly generate visual storyboards to share with his production team. He called the process creatively freeing, noting that cinema is a young, 125-year-old medium that just has to continually evolve.
Scorsese's workflow represents the absolute death of what we call slot machine prompting.
Can you explain that for those who might not know the term?
Sure. For the last few years, the standard user behavior was typing a vague sentence into a box, hitting generate, and hoping the algorithm spat out something usable. If it didn't, you pulled the lever again. But professionals cannot build operational workflows on hope.
And the software interfaces are finally reflecting that reality. Ideogram 4.0 and Ruve 2.0, which, by the way, just surpassed NanoBanana 2, they've completely abandoned the simple text box.
Right. They are moving to granular, code-like layout editing using JSON.
For those unfamiliar with JSON, it's essentially a structured text file, kind of like an architectural blueprint. Instead of typing, "make me a cool poster," you use a structured data file to tell the AI exactly where every specific pixel, font, and image layer must go.
It changes the interaction entirely from a slot machine to a surgical instrument.
It makes the output completely deterministic. XAI's Grok. Imagine 1.5 is bringing in deep audio syncing and structural realism based on those same precise controls.
And look at the music industry. Suno just raised $400 million with actual backing from the music industry, not to replace musicians, but to act as an infrastructural tool.
Exactly. And Amazon is currently generating fake product images on the fly, entirely in the background, purely to map out a customer's specific search intent when they don't know the exact keyword they are looking for.
The operational integration is everywhere. OpenAI launched Codex sites so you can instantly host the web apps your local agents generate. Google Labs launched Dreambeans to turn your personal localized Gmail and Photos data into structured daily narratives.
The technology is no longer trying to replace human labor wholesale. It's being woven into the mundane operational fabric of our specific daily workflows. And it is becoming terrifyingly competent at highly subjective logic.
That Stanford study really highlighted this.
It really did. A recent Stanford study ran a blind test using AI tutors, specifically Gemini 2.5 Pro and Claude Opus 4.7. They pitted them against actual contract law faculty on complex, subjective office hours questions.
And the results were stunning.
The AI beat the human law professors 75% of the time in blind legal reasoning.
75%.
Yeah.
But here is the bizarre artifact of this macro environment, the VC anomaly.
Oh, this is such a wild juxtaposition.
Right. While nations battle over grid infrastructure, and we have localized AI outperforming law professors, there is a massive surplus of venture capital just sitting there. They literally cannot build enough data centers to deploy it.
So what do they do with all that locked-up capital? Founders Fund, via Mike Solana, has literally created a high-stakes mafia game show for A-list tech founders.
It's absurd. They're funding literal parlor games because they can't physically plug in enough servers.
It perfectly encapsulates the friction of June 2026. On one hand, AI is so precise it optimizes Scorsese's prep without replacing his crew. On the other, the physical world is gridlocked.
The bottleneck is no longer the software's capability. The models are smart enough. The bottleneck is the physical world's willingness to host the infrastructure required to run them. Generative AI has matured from a looming existential threat into a decoupled operational tool.
So let's pull all of this together. The hypergrowth city finally hit the mountain, and now it's being forced to build inward. We started with the terrifying macro threat of frontier AI bypassing biological containment protocols, forcing the exact companies building the tech to beg for sovereign regulation.
A massive reality check.
Truly. Then we looked at the sheer physical reality of a 71% public backlash against data centers, a rejection so severe people would rather live next to nuclear reactors.
Right.
And we saw how that concrete wall triggered the decoupling phase. The industry is abandoning the centralized cloud, offloading the compute burden directly onto the 16-gigabyte laptops sitting on our desks, and embedding precise, deterministic workflows into the daily operations of everyone from local developers to Hollywood legends.
And that architectural pivot raises one final, highly structural question that I want to leave you to explore on your own.
What's that?
If the tech industry's grand solution to the insurmountable cloud infrastructure crisis is to force the immense computational burden down onto your local laptop and your personal phone, who ultimately owns the rights to the sovereign intelligence being generated by your hardware's electricity?
Wow. That is a vital question for a decoupled world. Keep questioning the architecture, and thank you for joining us on this forensic deep dive. We'll see you next time.
That concludes our forensic briefing for June 4th, 2026. The strategic signal for today is the localized moat. The structural markers from this week show that the era of unlimited cloud expansion is over. Microsoft launching 7 of its own models to bypass OpenAI, Google paying Android developers to acquire closed code bases, and the massive 71% public revolt against data centers all point to the same reality. The future of AI belongs to localized efficiency and proprietary data. You cannot run a sustainable enterprise by blindly renting expensive cloud models that face a physical resource crunch and rising political resistance. True high performers must lock down their local architecture and secure their data pipelines. If you want to own your infrastructure instead of being managed by it, check the show notes for the AI Executive Toolkit. As an exclusive asset for our community, we have provided deep discount codes for Google Workspace and My AI and Machine Learning Tutor Pro apps. You can claim those perks directly through the links in the show notes below. This episode was sponsored by IREA. Subscribe to the Jamga Mind channel on Apple Podcasts to always listen completely ads-free. I am Anna. Stay sharp and keep unraveling the future.
And before you go, if your company is building the tools that power the workflows we talked about today, I'd love to showcase them to this audience. We don't just run ads, we build technical simulations that prove your value. Let's build something together. Visit jamgamind.com/partners to get started. Until next time, keep building.